Welcome to another episode of Spiritually Powered Horsemanship, where Cindy and Laura, two very different women from two very different backgrounds, share how they are alchemizing hearts and horses for a deeper connection with life. One of our deepest intentions on this podcast is to keep it real, because in our horsemanship journeys, there's no black and white. Nothing is for sure, and anything can change at a given moment. So in that, we're always going to share with you our intention for an episode, but Cindy and I are pretty good at calling each other forward and exploring something out of left field when we see that that person needs that support. And we're going to take you along on that journey. So if it happens and we take a right turn and end up somewhere else, we trust that it was meant to be. As you listen to this episode, if you're finding yourself having an aha, a new awareness, or just really enjoying the conversation, please leave us a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to us. This is the best thing that you can do to help us get this podcast into the ears of more passionate horse people.
Today we are doing part 2 of Back to Basics. And part 1 was relationships, and part 2 is horsemanship. And in this episode, we could go over so many things, but we've picked out some of what we believe to be really important and foundational. First one that I'd like to bring up is entering our horse's pen or stall, or anything we're going to call it enclosure. And I have noticed that a lot of horses will be crowding the gate. And when we open the gate, do they move out of the way? Or do you have to shimmy through? Because that right there is setting the tone for leadership. Now, one thing I learned years and years ago in my, now I'm aging myself here, but in my early 20s when I started into veterinary medicine and started working and going to a lot of ranches. And I learned very quickly that there is a proper way to open and close gates with livestock. And so often we will open the door outward towards us, which is incorrect. Most doors that only swing one way will only swing inward, but doors that swing both ways, you should get in the habit, should's a word I don't usually use, get in the habit of opening the gate into your horse's enclosure. The reason for that is, one, it puts the barrier between you and your horse, encouraging them to back out of your way. It also psychologically tells them to back away. There's something coming at them. Whereas if we open it outward, psychologically, they see an opening. And if you have a horse that likes to escape, they're going to push right past you. So it's really a safety issue. And God bless the old ranchers who educated this young 20-year-old. And so I'm mindful of that. I teach that, but I also see the difference that it makes with the horses and their manners, and setting that stage that the minute I walk into their pen, I have taken the leadership role. Anything you want to add to that, Laura? Am I missing anything?
Well, my barn is set up, it's a bunch of communal pastures, and we have to walk through those communal pastures to get out. I used to go through 3, now I go through 2. So I push the gate into not always my horse, because sometimes I know the horse on the other side is going to be more of a potential behavioral issue. So I pick and choose which way that gate goes based on who I'm more likely to need to move.
That's beautiful. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Entering the pasture, my horse has always lived in such big paddocks that she could be a half an acre away when I arrive. So the crowding the gate issue has never really been a thing. And we're kind of, all of our gates are chained and unclipped. And so it's a pain in the butt. So we slip through the panels all the time. Sometimes she's at one end of the paddock and sometimes she's at the other, and I have to go around like a row of mare motels in the middle. So I choose which direction I go around based on where I see her when I pull in my car. Like, there's no spot that's normal for me to enter. I enter from or sometimes we do a ton of communal caring for our horses. So sometimes I'll go through the back pasture and already have a horse with me and be coming through the gate the other direction. And so that means there's no expected pattern. But Cindy, when you were talking, I realized there absolutely could become patterns of behavior there if your horse is in a small paddock or a stall, where they're going to set that tone every time unless one of you is going to set the tone.
Right. I mean, I have seen horses like pin their ears back and just not move out of the way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to challenge you here on this. I'm just curious to see where this goes. You said there's no pattern, but I bet there is a pattern, and you're applying the rule of being flexible with your plan.
I guess you're right, because I'm entering from wherever it makes the most sense in the moment.
Mm-hmm. But I was listening to you, there's variables, which means you still know what you're looking for. You still have the concept of how I'm opening and closing the gates based on who's showing up on that day in what order and who I'm going to grab first. I'm going to start at the back and work my way up. But you're still having a plan. And you still have patterns, but they're multiple different patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's cool to think about. It reminds me of back in the day when I used to work at a ranch where we would be assigned to go grab one horse or go grab 20 horses.
Yeah.
And we would be timed. So we had to know our gear and we had to know, which horses we were getting and strategizing. So now I'm thinking about pattern versus plan. A pattern is something that when you do it 3 or more times, it's becoming a pattern, but there's always those variables.
I think the really important part is that you're the one setting the tone.
Exactly.
You're not letting your horse set the tone. And as we're talking about this, I realized being able to safely navigate your horses through other horses is really important. And a mistake I see over and over again is people leaving their horses to their own devices in that situation. And they're just going to keep themselves out of the way. And that is so important in your leadership and your trust with your horse. MJ knows as soon as the halter is on, her job is to remain behind me. Our very front paddock is training horses. So they come in all kinds of different states of dysregulation and experience around other horses and that kind of stuff. And they all eventually get integrated into the herd. And so sometimes they are all over us the first 2 or 3 times we come through. And her only job is to stay in pattern with me. And I go around in a circle and I keep that horse off of us for as long as I need to. And we've trained that and she knows that. And she has gotten less confident in it as I've become more and more pregnant, which has been fascinating. She wants to be my protector. And I have to tell her, no, I still have this.
That is such a true partnership, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys have been together and worked together for so long that she's like, I got you if I need to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me feel very warm and fuzzy, but I never want to put her in the position where she kicks another horse ever.
Right.
And so that's something, when you're going through other horses, whether you're walking by horses tied to trailers or walking through a pasture, whatever it is, I have my eye on all of those variables and I'm making sure they're all doing what I want them to do. And my horse's only job is to stay behind me so that I can maneuver as I need to.
And that is being the herd leader.
Yeah.
No matter where you're at, you're a herd of two, unless you bring in more. And that same rule applies when you're riding, so often, when you're trail riding and you have a horse that keeps creeping up on you, and that rider keeps pulling the horse back, that's really not the most effective way to do it. If you have I ride with Makatis, so I've got that long tail, and I just have them say now, which means I'm going to swing my Makati behind me and whack that horse in the nose. And then that horse is like, whoa, I don't want to be close, because I'm proving to my horse that I've got their back. So that's on the ground, going through the pastures like Laura's talking about, or anywhere, moving through the ranch, like you said, horse shows, anywhere. Are you the leader, or are you making your horse
fend for themselves in
defend
a way
itself?
where you're standing in the way of them really fending for themselves? And so they're just stuck in a box. That's the quickest way to nervous system dysregulation. And then you're starting your whole way. Whatever you're doing, you're starting it on a heightened state, which you don't want.
Yeah, you've really just undermined your horse's trust for sure. So that was the entering into the pen and leaving the pen. Now, when I am exiting pastures or pens, depending on where I'm at and who I'm working with, I will do it a few different ways. I go through first and the horse follows, or I will send the horse through, disengage them, and make them turn and face me while I come through and shut the gate. Because that is practicing trailer loading,
Mm-hmm.
or sending them
And
over a bridge.
sending. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
sending them through the stream. It's the sending and practicing that all the time. I was teaching a lesson today on the ground, and we were working on poles, because this horse is dragging his hind feet. So we were working on getting him to pick up his feet and things, but it wasn't just to work on that. It's like, okay, let's throw in, move the hind quarters, move the fore quarters. Can you talk to the front end and the back end of your horse on the ground? Can you walk into their neck and head and get them to politely yield to you so you can move the fore quarters around those? And can you weave through a cone? So there's always opportunity to be having the communication of the basics.
Yeah.
Horses do 6 things naturally. They go forward, backwards, left, right, up and down, meaning walk, trot, canter. Our job as their leader is to teach them to do it with us as fluid partners. And it starts on the ground, and it can start anywhere. Like when
it starts from the moment you're with them. It's not like, that's another mistake that I see people who don't have their basics down. They're like, oh, we don't start quote unquote training until we're tacked up, groomed up, ready to go. Meanwhile, when you went to get your horse, when you brought him out, when you tied him up, when you developed, there was so many things going wrong throughout that whole getting ready process. But your mind wasn't in I'm training my horse right now mindset. And so you just muddied the waters and made the communication, oh, all of a sudden, once we go down to the arena, she's going to have expectations for me. But she doesn't have expectations for me until that point. As soon as you drive in the driveway or walk out to the paddock,
you should have a plan. You
Yeah.
should have a plan on what you're going to do. I agree 100%, Laura. I watch so many people almost mindlessly going out to get their horses.
Right.
And you're right. They're going to come in, they're going to groom them. And, sometimes they're in a hurry. Sometimes they're preoccupied. Sometimes they're there really embracing the moment. And then, yeah, once the tack comes on, the training it's training time. Their whole mindset changes. And then the horse starts to be like, I don't like being under saddle. I don't like getting the saddle on. And they don't understand why. And it's because they the person has a mindset that could be improved upon.
If I were to go get MJ tomorrow and she was standing in the way of the gate and wouldn't move, our training session would be right there until that was communicated and worked through.
Yeah, like you guys have heard me talk about Dakota, who doesn't like to be caught.
Yeah.
And I've had the farrier sit there and waiting 20 minutes while I'm trying to catch her, and I have to look at him and go, hey, are you okay if we're not going to do 8 horses today? We might only get 4 done because I can't leave her in the middle of this because I'm going to teach her the wrong thing. So I the way that I look at it is I am stepping into that leadership role, creating the plan, creating the routine of what we're going to work on that day when I'm grabbing their halter, when I'm going out to grab their halter. And as I'm walking down there, the minute I walk inside, our partnership and communication has started right then. And it does not stop until I take them back in there. They yield their hindquarters to me. They lower their head, turn their nose into me, and politely participate with me taking the halter off.
Yeah.
I give them a good rub, maybe a handful of cookies or whatever, and now we're done. They're free to go. So that brings us to the haltering part. You just heard how I like to take the halter off. The way I know, there's 2 ways that I know if I've done right by my horse during our time spent. When I unhalter them, do they turn tail and run?
Mm-hmm.
Or do they want to stay and be loved on? And all my horses, most all my horses are huggers. Do they want to hug before we're done? And the second way I judge how I've done is when I go to pick them up the next time.
Yep.
Do they meet me at the door ready to go? Or do they look at me and like, no, peace out, pick somebody. Harry usually sees me coming with the halter and runs to me. Like he meets me at the gate, just full on running. Well, we were doing training for our posse, our mounted posse work. And we were doing 2 days in a row. And the second day I went to get him, he would not come up from the bottom of the pasture.
Oh, I'm tired boy.
And I was like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry, but
Not for me, Mama.
we really gotta go. But pay attention to, I mean, I really pay attention to that because it tells me so much. How do you know when you've done right by your horse?
Exactly the same way. It's not, it's really reading the energy with her because it's not uncommon for her to just want to go be social when we're done. But it's not like an explosive, I can't wait to get away from you. It's like this, goodbye, I love you. And then this like joyful trotting back to her friends, which I don't have a problem with. But really what I really, really watch is the pickup on the next time. I am so not as good of a rider as I want to be, and I know that my next level of riding is lying in my drilling in the arena and working on my leg position and my body position and practicing all that stuff. That's just my horse is not, she's smart, she is athletic, except for her injuries, but she does not need repetitive teaching. She needs to be shown how to do it once right, and she's got it. And when I'm like, I'm sorry, I need to practice that trot to canter transition 800 times, she does not like that. And so then I'll go to catch her the next time and she'll just be like sullen and, that nose will be kind of tipped away from me. And she'll just be like, oh, are we going to drill again? And when that happens, it's like, oh, okay, I need to make today fun. That's what I go to, is Maybe we just do body work. Maybe we just go on a chill ride. But I have been overdoing my learning at her expense, and that's not fair.
We get so, you're not alone on that. We get so hyper focused on what we need to get better at, and we should. We should want to be the best we can be for our horses, but we get a little tunnel visioned.
Yep.
And I love patterns. And there's so many fun patterns that serve those purposes. And what I try to do, and I caught myself the last time I rode Harry out at the fairgrounds with one of my students, I was trying to get that right canter lead, and he just couldn't do it. And I was kind of grilling it. I got a little hyper focused. And I broke my own rule, because what I will do is I will work on it until I get it right once. And then we'll just go chill, and we'll go walk, and we'll go stand and just let them rest. And then we'll come back and we'll do it again. So I try to break it up, but it's easy for us to get just like, rah, we're going to get this today.
And as humans, we want to lay down that muscle memory pattern.
Yep.
And as horses, they're like, we go from walk to canters all the time. We don't need to lay down the muscle memory pattern.
What is wrong? Because if we keep grilling it into them, it gets, and I did this to Harry. It gets to the point where they start trying to do something different because they think they're doing it wrong. And so Harry, since he was 10 months old and we were working on a circle, if he departed on the wrong lead, he would do a flying lead change and correct it on his own. So when we started learning in the saddle to depart on that right lead, and he was doing it on the left, he would throw his head down because now he's got 110 pounds on his back. He'd throw his head down to try and do that lead, and I thought he was trying to buck.
Oh, yeah.
So I interrupted it. So now I can't get him to self-correct unless I'm really light on his back. So we kind of went squirrel off on the side about that. But I think it's a value when we're working on new things that we make sure we just don't grill it until the horse starts going, okay, clearly I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because we keep doing it over and over.
And you have to know your horse, because some horses are super patient and they will do it over and over for you. And some horses are not. MJ's that way. She's like, I'm gonna try something else because clearly this isn't it. And
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
I pushed it too far. Yep.
So we talked about when I go in and I take my horse's halter off, but we didn't talk about haltering. And when I go to catch my horse, I like my horses to come catch me versus me having to go catch them. But when I present them with that halter, this is the way I do it, is I put everything in my left hand. I give them a big hug with my right hand and then take the long tail of the halter with my right hand and then present the nose piece in front of them. And they politely put their nose in and then tip their head towards me at a low level, because again, Laura's pointed out how short I am. And then I tie the halter. I always use a rope halter. I want my horses to participate in everything we do. How about you?
It's really important to me that MJ sees me coming, and is ready for that halter. I see a lot of people who have trouble catching their horse. They have that halter behind their back. That's surprising. That's getting lucky. It's not catching.
That's being predatorily sneaky.
And it might work one time, but they're not stupid. It's not going to work for you long term, and it's not doing anything for your trust. So it's this breaking it down. I notice if I walk up to her and she turns away, there's got to be a conversation there. When she's in a tendon flare up, that conversation happens a lot because a walk that's not going to be super comfortable is coming. And it's just a give and take. I know you're uncomfortable. We have to go on a walk. You're going to feel better but afterward. You're going to feel a lot better if you don't spin 10 circles avoiding me. Just let me walk you in a straight line. It starts with standing at her shoulder, presenting that halter. And then once the relaxation comes and the head comes in, the halter goes on. But it's also never I don't go to put that halter on until I know that she's going to stand there. It's a great way to get in a wreck or teach your horse to pull away from you, is rushing it, trying to jam it on them, and they pull away and rip out of your hands.
That is the beautiful, perfect description of a predator catching a prey animal. Gotcha. That means you have a huge hole in your relationship. Yep. Or your horse is trying to tell you they don't feel good if that's not a normal behavior for them. Or it's hey, did you check your attitude at the gate before you came in? Because if you didn't, I would prefer you did.
Yeah.
So
one that really gets me that happens, my husband only comes out to the barn once a week. And dad days are good. Dad days are fun. And that she'll always go to him first. And my little mama heart goes a little bit. We don't pay attention to who has the halter and who doesn't. And we just chuck the halter to whoever she goes to. That one is, I'm so glad they have a great relationship. It's wonderful. I'm like, all those hours. And she's like, hey, Dad, my best friend.
I have a stinking suspicion that that's going to be the same with the little one when she comes.
Yeah.
Dad is great. And mom is like, oh, makes us do everything we don't want to do.
Yes. The disciplinarian and the fun guy.
Yep. So now that we have our horses haltered, let's talk about leading.
Yeah, and all of this, you get to choose your level of mastery that you want to go to with it. Leading is fun because you do it all the time. It's probably one of the things we do the most with our horses. And how masterful can you get at it? Can you throw your horse's leader up over their back and just walk and have them follow you and stop and turn and go with you? Can you lead with 2 fingers, 3 fingers? Where are the holes in that process? Notice where directions do they want to go? But the more, the more intentional you are, you're like, okay, it's leading, who cares? And leading is the foundation of everything. Is your horse watching you and operating on your body language and your cues, or are you just yanking them around and shoving them into the position that you want them to be in? Because that's not leading. And that's a huge hole in your basics if that's what leading looks like to you. When you go, do they go? When you stop, do they stop?
When you turn, do they turn?
Yep, all of that. If you don't pay attention to these details, you're going to have holes. And that's so okay. Yeah, do I have to put my hand straight under your chin to get you to move? That's not leading.
Or do I do it because I don't trust you?
Or do I do it because I don't trust you? Yeah.
I have to control you.
Yeah, where's your level of comfort with trusting your horse to watch you and respond instead of being the one that's physically forcing them to make the move?
Yep. Predators want to hold things close and tight and control them. Prey animals need to have the freedom to move their feet. And so if you're holding your horse close by that snap, you're already telling them, you better beware. Something's not right. Beware. And then if they spook, they have nowhere to go because you're right underneath them.
And you have no moves to make because you're just going to get either get dragged or have to let go.
Right. And then it's going to be the horse's fault because you didn't have the confidence or you didn't take the time to nurture the relationship. I encourage my students and myself to leave at least a 2 to 3 foot belly in the rope. And I like to walk right behind the throat latch in that neck area. But I also want my horses to know that if we're in a situation like Laura and MJ do a lot, where we're walking single track trails, here we're walking through deer paths through the sagebrush.
Which is kind of fun because you can pick and choose where you want to send them.
Yep. And so they need to know how to walk directly behind me and not over the top of me. And they need to learn how to walk beside me. And now, like Laura was, saying, how comfortable are you with the lead rope? I practice in the arenas first. I work with a 12-foot lead. Can I go 6 foot out? Can I go 12 foot out? More like 11 because I want to have a little room if they booger to grab that rope. But can we walk that far away from each other and still walk as partners? And can I walk? We do this a lot in the sagebrush. Can I walk behind my horse with the lead rope either on the left side of them or the right side of them, and they're picking the trail? And I don't have to tell them to go. They don't try to go without me. I look for an opening and I'll turn their hindquarters. Can you play with leading and backing? Like, can you stand behind your horse on your 12-foot rope, hold on to their tail below the bone and the rope, and gently wiggle and get them to back up with you? I mean, these are all fun things to do, right, Laura?
Yeah, and now I cannot do that because my horse loves tail pulls and she'll just dig in and say, pull harder, I love it. But it's all, I would have to find a different way to communicate that ask. That's all it is.
It would simply be with the rope.
Yeah, don't pull on the tail.
Yeah.
Um,
I have seen some people put their hand on the right above the tail, and then tap that while they wiggle that rope to get that backup going, and then all they have to do is tap on the back. So use your imagination, right?
Right. But it's all working, we talked about our energy work. Once you get out on that 12-foot lead, you're communicating with your energy. Cindy doesn't have a 12-foot lunge line to make up for the fact that she can't read it out until she's throwing her energy, putting it where she wants to go. Super fun exercise is just playing with increasing the space and decreasing the space and doing your hindquarter and your forequarter yields, stopping and backing.
Weaving around cones, going through the L pattern of PVC pipes. I mean, there is all of this stuff we're talking about is using the basics: forward, backwards, left, right, up and down. Left and right is can you get them to side pass over things, and how close do you have to be to communicate that? So all of these things that we're talking about, in order to grow your horsemanship to this kind of mastery, and hear me when I say this, Laura and I will spend the rest of our lives mastering horsemanship. The
amount of time we spend on a lead rope doing that is stupid a lot.
Yeah. We are much more masterful than we were 10 years ago, but we will always be striving to become more masterful. But I know so many people that I work with, and actually I don't really work with a lot of people that have this particular mindset because it doesn't align with my belief system. But there's so many out there who just want to get on and ride. They want to do dressage. They want to do hunter jumper. They want to go trail riding. They want to do a Western equitation. You know, they want to just ride, but what they don't understand is that's not where the relationship is developed. The relationship and the partnership is developed on the ground, developing the principles. And then we were talking about the principles and just talking about, you know, going through patterns and pulling on, whacking with the tail. Those are purposes. So first you learn the principles and then you put them to purpose, or you learn the basics and then you put them to task. And so many people that Laura and I both work with or witness have no clue about the basics.
And I want to add in, how is your horse performing the basics?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see a lot of horses the people are going through the motions because they've heard that they need to do groundwork, but they don't know what they're looking for. Go back to the episode on releases and awareness. Is your horse confidently and controlled doing the basics? Or are you having to drag them? Or are they so nervous that they're rushing?
Yeah. Where's the connection?
Where's the connection? And, you know, if you put your horse out on a circle and they're just running really, really fast with their head sky high in the air, and then you say, okay, we've done 10 and we're done because we did 10 and the circle was there, you didn't actually master that basic. I want my horse to be able to walk a circle, trot a circle, canter a circle based on very light voice cues and energy increases and decreases from me without it being jerky and panicky. And if it's jerky and panicky on the ground, I don't get in the saddle that day.
Yeah.
Because she's not in a state where she's ready to be ridden. And we're going to have a frustrating, jerky ride where I'm going to get scared and she's going to get, it's just not going to be. And so it's not about going through the motions and saying, I did my groundwork today. It's about using your horsemanship skills that you are working on mastering to observe your horse, see where they are, and facilitate confidence and relaxation and movement in a way that regulates their nervous system so that you can go on and do the bigger stuff.
Yeah, the reason that I do groundwork every time before I ride a horse is I want to know, how are they feeling physically? How are they mentally? And are they emotionally in a good place today? I want to know, are they willing to partner up with me?
Yeah.
Can we have a good fluid conversation on the ground? Because if we can't, when I take my feet off the ground and put my butt in the saddle, I'm sure in the heck not going to get it up there if I couldn't get it on the ground. And that's one of the things that people don't understand. I know some people who have worked years to get themselves through levels of particular programs.
Mm-hmm.
And what they have not achieved in all those levels and those certificates that say they've achieved those levels is they have never achieved the understanding of why we are doing these things. They watch the video, they go to the clinic, they learn how to move their bodies, they learn how to use their tools. The horse learns what they're supposed to do because they've been taught that through pressure and release. But there's no understanding of the relationship, the psychology, the behavior, the partnership. And like Laura said, they're just going through the motions. And they don't have any better of a partnership based on two individuals coming together for the purpose of achieving things willfully as partners. They have a horse who has learned to go through the motions. And to me, there's a huge difference.
Huge difference. And I think once you understand that, that's where we say, oh my gosh, it's a game and it's fun. And if you're just going through the motions, you're looking at it, it's like, what do you mean it's a game and it's fun? It's a checklist and then I get on.
Right. I want to go ride.
Yeah. But when you develop that communication, sometimes you're like, shoot, we spent an hour and a half playing in here and didn't even realize it. That was a ball. We're done for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. The more that I understand the psychology and horse behavior and the autonomic nervous system and how horses really from the inside out, the more I love playing games with them
Yeah.
on the ground. And when we get it going good on the ground, then the next test is take your feet off the ground and put your butt in the saddle and see if you still got it going on there. Same thing with liberty. You know, so many people abuse round pins and liberty. That's a whole nother talk because you can really do some damage to your horse, not knowing why we do those two things. But let's talk about grooming.
Mm.
Grooming your horse to me is such a bonding experience. You know, first of all, it's to keep them healthy and clean. But it's also, I learned years and years ago, don't touch your horse without your heart in your hand. And so when I'm grooming, I'm not just hurrying up to get to the next, you know, to get to the groundwork or get to the saddle. I'm like, hey, I'm here with you. I'm connecting. How do you feel? Looking for sore spots, looking for sores, looking for tension. And, you know, testing their back to make sure it's not sore. But I also feel that there is not a spot on my horse that I should not have earned the privilege to touch.
Absolutely.
I hope you heard what I said. I don't expect them to let me. I don't make them. I earn their trust and their respect that I can touch every area on their body, including their privates and their rectum, as well as inside their ears and inside their mouths. What about you, Laura?
Yeah. When I begin a relationship with a horse, one of my very, very early priorities is learning that.
Yeah.
For MJ, within I think 5 days of me owning her, got a horrible, she moved from Idaho to California and had no immunity to any of the bug bites down here. And I have no idea what she got stung by, but she got stung by something right in the vagina. And her poor vagina swelled up like you wouldn't believe. And I was in a position where I was having to apply like steroidal ointments to my horse's vagina, and I'd only known her for 72 hours. And we made it work and we were okay. But that is a huge lesson in kind of, thankfully the steroidal thing felt really good, so that helped move that relationship along quickly. But it's really important as your horse's caretaker, you can trust him everywhere. This time of year, my fingers are searching for ticks like crazy. I have attuned my hands to what my horse feels like. And as I'm running my hands over her, I'm noticing what feels different today. And I'm putting my hand on there, I'm asking questions. Is that, a scrape or a cut? Is it a tight muscle? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Do we care that it's different, or are we unbothered?
Right. Does it feel different, or does it feel different and she reacts different?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But grooming is the opportunity for you to just really bond with your horse, because if you watch horses out in herds, they are so tactile.
Yeah.
They love to groom one another. And that's a bonding, intimate, vulnerable experience that that we get to participate in, but it also is important if they ever get hurt. As a vet tech, I can tell you, and the same applies for dogs. Cats are a little different, but the more that we can help our animals, our horses and our dogs be comfortable being touched everywhere, the more it could literally make the difference between saving their lives or not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They get a horse gets stuck in a fence or a panel or something in their mouth or their leg in something. And if you haven't nurtured that relationship where they trust you to get in there and help them out, yeah, you could, by the time you find somebody to sedate them, it could be too late.
Yeah. Sedation is always an option, but it should never be the plan.
No.
And also notice if your horse is standing still to be groomed, or if you're kind of having to chase them around. And then it becomes environmental. Is there something going on around us? Or is my horse not wanting to be touched in a specific area or all over? It's a huge tell for how the rest of your session's going and how they're feeling.
Well, and I'm going to interrupt you and add one thing. It goes back to the self-awareness, horse awareness, environment awareness. Is it environmental? Is it horse? Or is it me and the way I'm approaching things?
Right. But
great point.
Don't be surprised when a ride doesn't go well if you glossed over the fact that your horse wasn't standing still to be groomed.
Or saddled.
Yeah. I have had MJ so relaxed while grooming her that I go to pick up her foot and she lays down while still on the blocker tie. And I'm like, excuse you. But like usually it's face on the ground, total relaxation. I love this. And if it's not, I'm asking why.
And then the hoof cleaning, I have a lot of people who struggle with that and a lot of horses who can be super naughty about that. And when I'm out feeding these horses, even my semi-wilds who I can't put a halter on, I still will run my hand down their leg. And as soon as I'm watching. And as soon as I can see them shift their weight, I will say up, because I know they're going to lift it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they lift it, I'm like, good girl, good boy. And I give them a cookie. But all of my ones who are not wild, I clean all their hoofs out there while they're loose in the pasture. And I tell them up so that when my farrier shows up and they're kind of being snarky, I'm like, just tell them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I tap on the back of their leg or I gently pull on the feathers on the back of their leg while I'm saying up. You should be able to pick up all 4 of your horse's hoofs willingly. They should not snap it out of your hand, nor should you impolitely just drop it. That's rude. And if your horse is really good with their hoofs, then I'm going to challenge you to stand on one side and pick up all 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's pretty handy to do too. And it's good for your horses to know that.
Yeah.
Anything else about the hoofs? You're our hoof expert here. You trim your horse. So you probably know more about that than I do. What would you add?
Well, it's a tell in the trust. If your horse is really uncomfortable, that's a predator-prey thing. They're giving you their control. And that's where it's really important when it's not going well to suss out. It's also, if there's anything physically going on with them, it's hard. So as soon as it becomes hard, you have to ask why and get to the bottom of that. Because I'm going to address my horse doesn't trust me to basically give control of her ability to get away entirely differently than I'm going to address this hurts for some reason. Trust your intuition to know the difference, because I'll make a bajillion different accommodations for physical discomfort. With the trust, it's going to be more of just putting in more time, going slower. Like, I'm not going to put a rope on a horse's foot because they don't trust me. With my back and with MJ's injuries, have a really hard time putting her front feet down slowly when I'm coming off of my hoof stand. So I always put a rope on that foot because then all I have to do is gently walk my hand down the rope to put her down instead of dropping her and hurting us both. But it's just notice if is it always one hoof? Does it change? Which hoof is the problem? Is it the way that you're approaching them? Is it like, be curious about it, but also don't accept it as normal. Work on making it better because it should be an easy part of your routine. I pick my horse's feet twice every time I'm with her, before we ride or before we go and do and after. I notice when I'm picking, did she pull away at a specific point? Okay, then I'm going to get my hoof pick out. I'm going to press on that point a little more. Are you tender in that point? I monitor all the structures of the hoof, and we'll have to go into that in a different episode. But just noticing changes in your horse's hooves is such an important way of monitoring their health and knowing what's going on with them. And you have to be able to get your hands on them and get them to relax so that you can truly see what's going on there and be able to monitor it. It's just such an important basic skill that is a priority.
So important. The overall health of a horse depends on how healthy their hoofs are.
Huge. They're the biggest metric.
Yeah, and so many of us don't appreciate that.
Okay, so the next thing on your horsemanship basics is your tack. I'm not an expert bridle or saddle fitter, but I know enough to know that my horse's tack fits her. And I know enough to know that I can look at my tack and know if there's a problem, know if something needs maintenance, know if something needs adjusting. And I know what everything looks like when it's proper. And that's something that a lot of people, they have a professional saddle fitter come out and they adjust that saddle one time, but they don't know how to look at it and see changes. And your horse, like MJ, goes up and down in weight in the winter and the summer, like changes happen. So a basic horsemanship skill is getting to know your tack and knowing when it's right and when it's wrong for your horse and how to adjust it.
And listen to your horse, because they are often the first clue when your tack isn't fitting correctly. And we blame it on bad behavior. But I read something the other day. I would like to take credit for it, but I cannot. I read it somewhere and I will never forget it. Behavior is a form of communication. Wow. Powerful, powerful statement. I've seen so many horses all of a sudden start misbehaving, and it's like, oh, they're having a bad day, they're being stupid, blah, 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 blah. And is that true? Or is it their tack? Is it meaning bridle? Often more so saddle.
Mm-hmm.
Or did they get cast during the night and they need to see a chiropractor? Cast means that they roll over and get stuck. Or if they're in the pasture, did they slide being goofy? Did they slide and wipe their feet out from underneath them? Not that Harry does that a lot, but you know, they do that. They can tweak themselves and not feel good. And we would know that, going back to what Laura was talking about, is her hands have learned to know how our horse feels. And we can all do that with our hands. It's so important.
When you have that skill, so it's coming together with the skill and the intuition. Yeah. When my hands feel something wrong, but I also have the skill to put my tack on and look at it and know that it's correct, that helps my diagnostic hugely.
I want to throw in this huge tip, because I've had this happen, not to me, but to many others. I always carry a training string is
Mhm.
always attached to my saddle, well as, we have a lot of ranchers out here, and they will often, when their lariats have their ropes have worn out, they will cut them into smaller sections and they become night latches, which
Mm.
is you put on your saddle in case your horse goes to bucking, you can grab onto that. But they also carry them if they have to doctor a calf, they can pull one off their saddle. So I always have those on my saddle. And I can't tell you how many times I've been riding with somebody who has their bridle is all put together by Chicago screws. And if you don't check the Chicago screws regularly, they will back out and fall out. And all of a sudden, your bit is hanging by one side because you lost your Chicago screw. And if you're with me, you're lucky because I'm going to take one of my strings and we're going to rig it up
Tie it up, yeah.
until we get back to the trailer. Some people will carry baling twine. I carry ropes of various sizes. But because of that, none of my headstalls, and every one of my horses has their own headstall set up. None of them have Chicago screws. They have buckles, they have leather, or they have really cool setups where you weave it through the leather and it secures itself that way. So if you ride with any screws on your bridles, check them regularly.
Yeah, that's really important.
And I was putting my saddle away the other day after riding Katniss, and I looked at my latigo, and it's been attached to my saddle long enough that the little leather strings that are connecting it are getting loose enough that it's getting loose. So I need to go back in and redo that because that's what's holding my cinch on. And if that thing fails, I mean, the theory is that it's against the other throws of the latigo, so it's up there against tight. But that is a serious train wreck if you just make that assumption. And I don't want that to happen. One, I don't want to get hurt, but more importantly, I don't want the mental and emotional damage that that would do to my horse if
Absolutely.
our gear failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So very important to check your tack.
Oh. Then our final thing on our basic list is can you yourself load your horse in a trailer? And it's even if you never plan on leaving your property, fires, floods, tornadoes, emergencies, medical, whatever, that is a skill that you gotta have.
Yeah. And even if you don't own a trailer, there's so many people at the places you're at, or you find friends who have trailers. I have known people who have had horses at their property and they don't have a trailer, but they have friends that can come pick them up. And you need to know that your horses can get into a trailer. Because again, that's life-saving.
And there's just, don't be afraid to call somebody and ask them to bring their trailer over and let you practice.
Take them out to lunch.
Yeah, anybody in my horse circle could call me and say, hey, I'm having a little trouble. I'd like to load. I would park my trailer out at the barn for the day and let them have at it because it's so important. And good people are going to be willing. Don't be afraid to ask. People are going to let you do it.
Yep. And if you don't know how, ask somebody to help teach you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Most horsemanship instructors do trailer loading lessons.
and a good horsemanship, a good horse community has people who's willing to teach you if you really want to learn.
Yeah. So this episode was about the basics, and the basics are where we've now talked about relationship basics and horsemanship basics. Your horsemanship basics back up your relationship. Without the horsemanship, you have a fluffy teddy bear, lovey-feely relationship that you can't do anything with. When you hold yourself to a higher standard, when you hold your horse to a higher standard, mastering the basics, everything is easy because you can lead at a high level of mastery. You can talk to the front end and the back end. You literally never have a problem going or coming through a gate because you know exactly how you're communicating to your horse. You set a standard for yourself and you have a level of clarity for them that allows you to just operate at a really confident level.
And if you ever run into something that isn't easy, because they're living beings and we're living beings, you have mastered or you have become very masterful at the basics. So you will know how to problem solve.
Yes.
Get you and your horse through that because you made the basics priority.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like the relationship is the being and the horsemanship is the doing.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
And striking that balance makes a really, really healthy relationship that can go lots of different directions.
And you know, the difference between Laura and I and beginners is not that we know more. We just know how to do the basics more masterfully.
Oh, yeah.
And those who are mentors to us know how to do the basics more masterfully than we do. And therefore they can get more done.
Yeah.
So the basics are it.
Absolutely. One of my most fun days is going to an obstacle course and applying the basics on it.
So we would love to have you guys give us some feedback on the basics and how you're applying them to getting a lot of fun things done.
Yeah. Where did you recognize a hole in your basics that you're excited and curious to fill?
Thank you for tuning in to this episode on our podcast. I want to remind you that we'll be here every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, following the golden rule. That's the plan, but we are always willing to be flexible. If you want to connect with either one of us, you can do so by finding me on Facebook, my Facebook group, Unbridled Reflections. And you can find Laura on Instagram. She's known as the Homestead Witch. The links to those contacts can be found in the show notes below.
Don't forget, if you learned something new today, had an aha, or walked away with a valuable nugget of awareness, you can say thanks by leaving us a review on whatever platform you're listening on.